on! Get in here!
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We are here for round number 3 of WTRL's Zwift Racing League. You may notice there was no review last week. Life and COVID recovery kind of got in the way of that. But you guys don't need me to tell you how to ride a flat team time trial on a familiar course. I have faith that you all smashed it. Anyway, back to this week, and we're heading out to Makuri Islands for the Chasing the Sun route. So let's see what we have in store for us. So the route is 35 kilometres long, 315 metres of elevation gain. There are a whopping 5 intermediate sections on this route, all of which offer first across the line and fastest through the segment points. The route also contains the notorious tempo climb, which is on gravel, and that means yet another bike swap. Clearly these are in fashion at WTRL at the moment, as this is the second race in a row with one. Power-ups this week, we have the helmet, which you can use in your sprints. They're great for all the intermediate points. If you're lucky, you'll have one in your locker for the final sprint as well. Next up's the van, great for sitting in and drafting. Lastly, we have the Ghost, which gets our Junk Power-up of the Week award. I guess you could use it on one of the longer sprint sections to get the drop on your opponents, but mostly not great. Bike choice this week, due to the rolling nature of the parkour, I would recommend either the Tron or the Chapter 2 Toa for the tarmac sections. The gravel climb, if you're swapping, I'd go with the Specialized Cruise or the Canyon Grail, but make sure whatever one you choose, you've got your gravel wheel sets on them. Anyway, out on course, and you start off on the pens at the harbour at Nyukio. As always, it's a hard and fast out the gate, so make sure you're warmed up and ready to go. This one's going to be super quick because the first sprint is on you before you know it. After 700 metres of the gentle terrain, you hit the start of the alley sprint. It is going to be hard to see in the bunch, so make a mental note that just as you come into the little shops here, that's where it's going to kick off. It is a fairly long one though, 480 metres. It's pan flat though, so sit in the wheels of those that push early and open up your final sprint when you're comfortable. You can hold it to the arch just down this narrow alley. And once you're through the arch, it's gentle rolling terrain until around 3.3 kilometres as you head up the train tracks. That means a short 300 metres at 5%. Now the rolling terrain is going to continue until 3.9 kilometres where your second sprint is upon you. And this is the railway sprint. This is another very long sprint, 640 metres, slightly downhill at -1%. Don't blow your sprint too early on this long one. After the sprint, try and catch your breath quickly because the first climb of the day is up after some of these gentle rolling roads. It doesn't award any points, but you can be sure it is going to splinter that lead group. Starting at 5.4 kilometres, this is the back of the rooftop KOM. This is 1.3 kilometres, an average of 3.7%, but much like the other side of the rooftop com, it's a step climb with pinches at 5 to 6%, followed by a short flat section and another 5 to 6% ramp all the way up to the top. Try and stay with the lead bunch here. If you get dropped, you're probably not going to be able to make it back to the group. The climb relents around 6.8 kilometres, we'll go down the other side. Not really much chance to super tuck here due to the nature of the climb itself and the multiple flat sections that are going to scrub off your momentum. So just be alert, try and stick with the bunch. You can't win the race here, but you can definitely lose it. Once you're down the other side, it's onto the rolling roads in Yokio, and we head out of the city and make our way to the countryside where our next sprint awaits. This is the countryside sprint, and a change from the last two. This is super short, only 130 metres, and again pan flat. You will want to open up and be at top speed when you hit the sprint start at 17.1 kilometres if you want to take any fastest through points here. For the countryside sprint at around 17.8 kilometres, you'll have a long drag up to around 6% up into the village for around 500 metres. You're going to pass through the middle of the village, head out the other side where another section of 3 to 4% awaits just to sap some more out of those legs before we get to the climb. The grind is going to continue as we head through the rice paddies and we approach our second climb of the day. So at 20.9 kilometres you will come through a small hamlet. You're going to take a sharp left after this onto the gravel of the tempo climb. For those of you going for the fastest through the segment, you are going to want to change bikes as soon as you hit the gravel, as the start of the KM is less than 100 metres into the gravelly section. Those of you not worried about the fastest through, you're probably going to want to change just after the KOM start, where the road tips slightly upwards to around 2% just to help you coming to a halt. Now, the climb itself is technically just 2.5 kilometres at 3.6%, but it's gravel, so it's going to be really slow, and there's some long flat sections in the last half that just drives down that average gradient. Most of the climbing here is going to be between 5 and 8%, with some pinches getting up to double digits for the gradient. Now the really steep stuff is actually going to start here around 21.6 kilometers. You're going to run into 7%, and from there it's going to be sort of constant. It's just going to be 7%, then it's going to dip down a little bit, 5%, then you might even find a little flat spot, then it's going to rise back up again. But this is largely going to be constant suffering, constant grinding all the way up until 22.6 kilometers. And here you're going to go over this little wooden bridge, and you need to use this 300 meters of flat just to compose yourself and start the final push, because going through those stone arches and the gradient rockets all the way back up, and it's heavy going right the way up to 23.3 kilometers. So from this little wooden bridge, it's going to be slightly downhill sprint into the banner at 23.6 kilometers. So from now on, there's only about 10 kilometers to go, and you're going to need to make your next decision based on how your race is panning out, how your legs are feeling. So I would recommend, if you are not going for the KOM and you're not going for the fastest through the segment here, change bikes as soon as you can. Maybe even when you hit that little bridge, at 23.3, when things start to flatten out, change bikes then, get back on your road bike. You might want to wait maybe until you go through the arch. That's fine. If you're going for KOM, if you're going through the fastest through the segment, change as soon as you can after the arch. Now some people, they might think, I've got a little gap here, maybe I've got 20-30 seconds on everybody else, I don't want to risk it by changing back, and they might want to try and take that last 10 kilometers on the gravel bike. It's a big risk, and in my opinion it's not one that is worth taking. We've come down the descent and we are back on the tarmac now for the final 9.3 kilometer run home. The action is far from over though. We still have one more intermediate sprint to come. So on the way to the sprint, you're going to see largely downhill and rolling roads as we make our way back into Neokio. With just 2.7 kilometers to go, we're going to hit the tower sprint forward. This is your last chance for intermediate points. Now you need to decide if it's worth pushing hard here, burning a match for the intermediate points, or if it's better to save it and hope to be fresher for the last sprint in a couple of Ks. The sprint itself, 320 metres long, slight incline at 1%. So again, just be aware of the length and the gradient change so that you don't go too early when you're opening the taps. And with that out of the way, you have just a couple of minutes now to plan your assault on the finish and work out how you're going to win this race. From the last sprint, there's going to be some standard Neokio rolling roads, false flats, ups and downs as you head along for the harbour. You're going to hit the hairpin. 300 metres to go. You can see the arch in the distance. You know what to do. As the road chicanes right and left, you smash it all the way to victory. Now with that out of the way, let's take a look at where this race is going to break up. As always, the start is going to make the first selection, but more so this time with the sprint being so close. Be ready to keep that above threshold effort for the first few minutes of this one. Next up, the railway sprint may pick off some people who are not paying attention, but I don't think it's going to make a big selection. The big selection is going to be made on the rooftop climb. This one's going to dispose of the weaker climbers and maybe a few that had used everything they had on the first two sprints. The tempo climb is going to see the final selection made, and this is going to be made by decision making and bike swappability as much as being able to hold a high power output on the gravel, and that's going to put you in the final selection of the day. Now the very last one, I don't think it will make much of a difference, but the tower sprint reverse. It's really decision time on this. Do you go for the win and save what you've got, or do you push and try and get first across the line points for your team? And that's the decision that you've got to make based on how the race is played out. Well, that brings us to the end of another route review. I hope you've gained something from this. Good luck out on course, and I will see you next time. Ciao.